And welcome, Rugby Rant fans. We're at episode 102. We had a little break last week. Me and Rob can't stand each other at some point. It's like an old married couple. We need a break every once in a while. Rob went to his sister's house. I went to my sister's house. And we slept in separate beds and slept with separate houses. And we came back this week, and we're back together again. Unfortunately, Ty Braga can't be with us. He's actually visiting family in South Africa and having a blast. So good.
Yeah, and now that we're back together, we're kind of hoping that the bunk bed collapses.
Exactly, bro. More room for activities, bro. More room for activities. But before we get started on the rest of the show, we're going to hit you with the Around the Pitch. And I'm going to start it off with the Around the Pitch, and I'm going to talk about the PR7s. The PR7s had their first event this year in San Jose, California. And coming out of that, if you guys don't remember, they're having a men's champion, a women's champion that's going to go through brackets. So they had pool play in San Jose. They're having pool play in Audi Field in DC this weekend, where I will be. Come say hi to me. And then they're having the championship brackets in Austin. You'll have a men's winner from the bracket, a women's winner for a bracket, and then they're having this third trophy, which is the franchise points trophy, which is men and women combined, the experts, the loggerheads, the headliners, and the loonies. Right now, after San Jose, the experts are winning ahead in first place with 16 points, the loggerheads with 11, headliners with 9, and loonies with 4. Rob, what you got?
Well, I'm going to stick on the sevens theme, and I'm going with the Gateway Sevens was this weekend, along with the Firehouse Sevens up here at my home pitch at Lamont. The Chicago Blaze host that. It's kind of a social event, but I want to focus more on the Gateway Sevens. It's a Midwest qualifier that was held, obviously, by its name in St. Louis, and the Chicago Lions doubled up on the men's and women's side. So big congratulations to them. The men's won the final 26-7, defeated the St. Louis Bombers. Congrats to Coach Matt Wagner, national champ last year, friend of the show, came back and won that qualifier. He has a strong team, so we're going to look for them to do some damage in the national championship run. And then the women's Lions doubled up. Shout out to my girl Murph, doing a great job there. They beat Metropolis, and I forgot to write down the scoreline, shamefully enough. But they're coached by a friend of mine, a guy that coached with me, the Warthogs at the high school level when Preston was a senior, Colin Doyle, friend of mine. So congratulations, Coach Doyle, his first year as a head coach. Put a W up for the Midwest Sevens in St. Louis.
Nice. I love St. Louis. Was there recently in March. Great town. If you have a chance, go check out St. Louis, even if there's no rugby there. So I'm going to talk about Rugby Canada. Rugby Canada had a tough outing against Spain in Ottawa, losing 57-34. And to be honest, the score wasn't indicative of the actual match. Spain was just in control the entire time. And in the last 10 minutes, Canada had what I would call consolation tries by Lloyd and McRogers. It was a tough outing for Canada, but honestly, I think a lot of the hate coming through to the coach specifically, it was a young team. They're trying to build caps here. There's a reason that some of these guys were picked. Rugby Canada is going into the Rugby World Cup 2023 by not being in any of the pools of play. They did not qualify. So why are you going to throw out the most experienced team you have against Spain when you can start bleeding the new guys? And as we know from the France model from the past 3 years, bleeding new guys early is going to help you. So bleed the new guys now for the next rotation in 2027 in Australia. And, the last thing about it is it's just stuff happens, man. It's rugby. And sometimes you catch a team like Spain who, honestly, they're fired up because they lost their appeal. So it's twofold. You have a bunch of players playing because you want to get up their caps for the national team. And you have a team that lost their appeal that they feel they should have won to get into Rugby World Cup after it was taken away from them. So you got a team called a team on a high. It is what it is.
Yeah, so I'm going to pick up and stick with the international theme just a little bit. And I want to throw a shout out and a congratulations to the 8-man on the NOLA Gold and the 8-man of the U.S. Eagles, Cam Dolan. He is now the Eagle with the most test wins under his belt at 30. So congratulations to him with that win, 22-21 against Chile. And he's coming up. He has 59 test caps. He's coming up on his 60th. Great to see. So, number one is Todd Clever at 76. So Cam's slowly inching his way there. And he will surpass Luke Gross here in just 4 more caps. So, hopefully this fall, we'll see Cam move into that third slot. No disrespect to Luke Gross, but it's good to see Cam accumulate some notoriety as one of our most and best caps Eagles.
Absolutely. Shout out to Cam. We love Cam. Me and Rob happen to be friends with him. It's great to see him getting there and getting those numbers and getting the congratulations he deserves for grinding his whole career. Talk about grinds. We're coming up with that friggin' Rugby Rant, baby. Unfortunately, I'm not competing in the Rugby Rant. I'm not grinding in the Rugby Rant. I'm giving the MC duties this episode. But you're going to catch a really good rant talking about the USA win over Chile right after word from our sponsors.
Tighthead Brewing Company is not just Chicago's premier location to watch rugby and enjoy quality ales and lagers. It is also a great place to enjoy local acts performing live music every Thursday and Saturday nights. Additionally, their Wednesday night trivia nights are something not to be missed. Tighthead is located in Mundelein, Illinois, and easily accessible for many Chicagoans, as it is just steps away from the metro. Owner Bruce Durr and the Tighthead staff are dedicated to ensure your microbrew experience is as tight as their beers. Bruce's love for rugby extends beyond the origin of his brewery's name. Tighthead is committed to supporting the rugby community. This includes his support for Lake County RFC and our own Rugby Rant podcast show. Tighthead's tap room is like the familiar rugby clubhouse in which friends and teammates can meet, socialize, and enjoy the wide variety of brews on tap. Regardless of whether your palate enjoys a good IPA or a dark barrel-aged brew, Tighthead can deliver. Hey, Chicago, when you want rugby, Tighthead Brewing Company will satisfy your thirst. Tighthead, it's worth more than a try.
And welcome back from the Around the Pitch segment, Rugby Rant fans. I'm the big guy, Scott Farrar. We got Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt, and we're hitting you with the rant, baby. And this first rant topic is going to be great. We're talking about the USA win against Chile, 22-21. And the two guys we have with us, we're very excited. Obviously.
Excited and intimidated, by the way.
A little bit. Across from me, Tony Ridnell, obviously an avid Seattle fan. If you don't follow any of the Seattle fan sites, always on there, giving his halftime thoughts, giving his full-time thoughts. Yeah. USA Eagle number 168, all around awesome dude. Tony, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. It's a big week at USA Rugby for sure.
Absolutely. A ton of rugby being played this week. And then now we actually have a new ranter. Very excited. His title, I believe, is Player Pathway and Youth Development for Young Glory. And for those of you that don't know, Young Glory is the nonprofit foundation that helps support rugby in the DMV area and around the Mid-Atlantic from Pittsburgh all the way down to Raleigh-Durham. Tim Brown, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. And Young Glory associated with, obviously, Old Glory DC. If you ever see anything on the social media, that's courtesy of our girl, Arminta Gunkel, who has been a ranter on the show numerous times. Shout out to Arminta. She does great work with them. Follow them on their TikTok at Young Glory DC. Guys, so for those of you that didn't get to watch because, you didn't want to pay for flow or you didn't read, the numerous articles, USA beat Chile 22-21, first leg of the World Cup qualifiers for that America's 2 slot. It was down in Santiago, Chile at Estadio Santa Laura. Between the rain, between the pitch being a mess because of the rain, and then, believe it or not, a second half power outage. It was like WrestleMania or something. It was like a WWE event.
Let's make sure we understand. There was no power outage. Notice the advertising boards were still had they still had power.
Yes,
exactly.
It's like what happens in South America.
2 minutes after Chile took a 2-point lead.
Yeah.
Yes, it was very interesting.
US is about knocking on the doorstep.
And I forgot. I believe there was communications issues where the AR's microphones and headsets weren't working for about 20 minutes, like a long period of time, where they were trying to use hand signals But listen, a win's a win. Despite terrible conditions, I will take the big guy. Will take a win any way he can get it. If it's an ugly win, it's a win. As a former hockey player, my dad said it doesn't have to look pretty. The puck just has to go in the net, and that's what I'm taking away for it. But you guys didn't come here to listen to me ramble as much as I know you wanted to. So, Tim, you could take it away. What are your thoughts on the USA win against Chile?
Well, I think you stole my thunder there with a win is a win. But when you think about it, the crowd was into it. There's so many things that could have gone wrong there. Everything from when you're on the road like that, people get sick. Conditions obviously don't favor the home team. Who knows everything else going on. So I was watching that game. And when you watch it, I think even more than a win is a win. It's the experience those players get. And that's something when those players get back together. You know, Tony, we were just talking in the pregame there about you and one of our owners tell the same stories about when you played the All Blacks. Those are all kind of experience that make players. And I'm looking at the roster we had on the field right here. Fairly young roster at 9, 12, 13, and 14. And I think, we came out there a point in advance, but I think even more valuable is the fact that those guys are going to remember that forever, that they were able to persevere there. And this is the kind of test that hopefully, USA Rugby can get 5 to 6 times per year. That'll be difference makers in a World Cup cycle. So the getting the point and getting out of there, huge accomplishment. But I didn't see anyone lose their cool or anyone. There was just nothing that was glaring to me where you're like kind of cringeworthy. It was all very positive.
Absolutely. And I mean, you talked about the fans, and I hate to use the term hostile fans because the fans were great, but
it looked
for the other team.
Oh, it was beautifully hostile. It was wonderfly hostile. I thought it was great.
Absolutely.
It was missing flares and someone running on the field, but that was all right.
But I love the atmosphere, even playing away, and I think sometimes playing away in that atmosphere gets you just as amped up as playing home in that atmosphere. So you love to see it. And you were talking about the players on the field. I mean, we still had our Cam Dolans, we still had our Nick Savettas, we still had our Jason Dams, Eagle number 550, Tony Ridnell.
Oh,
who was Eagle number 168. We talked about
That's a long way away, man. That's 400.
We talked about it in our pre-production, and Tony went, I had to kind of think about that when it was announced, so I just wanted to twist him a little bit. But I do think we had a good mix of what we needed to play and get a win in what was, conditions you just have to play in as you play rugby. It's disappointing because we were up by 6 or we were up by 8 points or 7 points at one point, 8 points at one point, and we thought maybe this would be it and this would help our differential. And that last big gas by Chile at inside the 5 meters, and Angus McClellan came in I think just at the right time. I think he came in at like the 73rd minute, and you needed him between minutes 78 and 81 where Chile was just pounding it. And Pin Chance when Galutski would make a tackle, get up, get in the A gap, make a tackle, get up, get in the A gap. And it was the last 5 minutes were very exciting, especially if you're a big fat forward like me. But I really want to hear what Eagle number 168 has to say.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thanks for having me on what's a big week for the Eagles. And as you guys know, I'm a pretty big Eagle fan. So the old school in me kind of looks at South American rugby sometimes, Chile, Uruguay, and just like, gosh, they shouldn't even be on the same field as us. But that's just not the case anymore. That is not the case. And they have done it. Those two countries in particular have done a super job. Just
were the Chileans in charge of Tony's feed?
Apparently. I mean, this is like, oh,
there we go. Hold on. All right. So just to let you know, in the last couple of years, they've really come on. So a team like Uruguay, all of their players have to stay around Montevideo. So they practice like 50 weeks a year. And I believe the same thing is happening in Chile. So as soon as Canada got knocked out last year, I think the Chilean Rugby Union and the people involved in rugby down there said, hey, we got a full tilt boogie blitz his first game against the U.S. It's down in Chile. We could, maybe get a few points up on them, try and hold our own in Glendale and go to their first World Cup. And I thought, I watched the Scotland game 2 weeks ago, Scotland A versus Chile. And to be perfectly honest, I wasn't impressed with Chile at all. I thought they were really pedestrian. It wasn't the greatest Scottish team. They just didn't look, like they were really hungry. They certainly didn't look like a team that was going to the World Cup. And it was a completely different atmosphere down there than it was last week. I mean, that was a cauldron of fire we were in last week. I mean, the fans were so loud. I mean, if you heard, you couldn't hear Matt McCarthy, but you could hear the crowd, right? And I was just so impressed with the whole scene down there, the atmosphere, the players. I mean, they went to war for 80 minutes. I mean, those guys worked and worked and worked. You could see the disappointment at the end, but after but they worked so hard for that try. So well-deserved 1 point differential. But I think there's literally nothing that we can take away from that game in terms of a predictor for this Saturday, because the conditions were just so bad. I was talking to someone, I thought that a game might get canceled with puddles that big, because I remember in the era when I was playing, there were a couple of drownings, and I thought they stopped. I thought they stopped play at that level, but those were 4 or 5 inch deep puddles. Some of them. I mean, you could get in trouble there.
Well, the only predictor would be backbone. Like
absolutely, no, for sure. I mean, and listen, on a dry day, 70-degree day. I mean, I'm thinking we are significantly better by many points than Chile, and hopefully we'll see that this Saturday. But the weather was a huge equalizer. The amount of high balls from the 10s was, I mean, that was kind of the play of the day, right? I think Petrie said it in minute 79 that the Chilean try was the first offload of the entire game, and I think that's right. Martin Yosefo got replaced, and I was like, oh my gosh, Martin was playing? Because it was also, and that's not his fault. He looks for work more than anyone I know.
Absolutely.
And it was just such a strange game in that way, and it was just a greased watermelon. I thought Taufete, ran with the ball very well. His nice low center of gravity, but a number of knock-ons, just spilling the ball like a greased watermelon. I don't think we have anything to judge that game off of, other than the fact that was a hell of a game to win. Really was.
Absolutely. And I think that, like I said, even though they scored at the end, it took them a while. There was only advantage, I think, twice in that 6 or 7 minute period, which sometimes we struggle with down inside that 5 meters where other teams get the advantage on us because we make mistakes. And in those conditions, just to have only 2 advantage penalties called, I thought that was good considering the conditions and considering what we usually have. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, 6-2 splits on both teams for the subs. Why? This was going to be a horsepower game up front. Yeah. They knew, they were going to slow the ball down. They were going to grind it down. And in those muddy conditions, I think that's the only thing you can do. Even though Christian Dyer, scored a try in the first 10 minutes, how he's high stepping through that mud. I don't see how his skill set's going to translate.
He looks like he could be on the verge of a nice career. He's playing well.
Sure.
Playing well.
Definitely. And he almost got a second at not being for a slippery ball.
I thought he did have it.
Yeah, he was close. But I think you hit everything on the head, and I think a gritty win is what we needed from this team. And I believe you're right. Scotland just beat the Argentinians 29-6 with their regular, with their senior team versus that Scotland A team that was played an unimpressive Chilean side.
Yeah,
so I mean, I think you hit every nail on the head. Rob, what do you got, buddy?
Well, I like that Tim mentioned the perseverance part. I think the U.S. Eagles learned a lesson from going to St. John and losing to Canada in the fall. Right, they went there, they got under the gun, they put themselves under pressure with some penalties, and they buckled. And I think it really showed in the scoreline at the end of the day. And I think the boys learned a lesson from that and came back and said, "Look, we got to sustain that pressure, and we got to keep our chins up, and we got to keep grinding." And what the conditions didn't help, but certainly, given the conditions, the boys just put their nose to the grindstone and got things done. And I think two things that stood out. And I think there's one thing that is a predictor, Tony. I disagree with Tony on this note. The dominant scrum. I think that dominant scrum is going to come back to Glendale. We shoved them, and I think there were a couple times we had opportunities to win the ball against the head, and damn near did, had it not for a penalty that were called. And I also think the line out, we really turned it around from the French Barbarians game, and our line out was much improved. It obviously showed in the two mauling tries balls that we took in. So I think those were two big takeaways. One of the other things that I think was interesting is that in spite of the conditions, I think we did a fair job under the high ball compared to Chile. I think there were a number of times the ball was put up high and they knocked it on and put pressure on themselves. And we didn't capitalize perhaps because the ball was a little bit greasy, but it was good to see the guys have confidence under the high ball. So kudos to our back three to do that, and to our number 10. AJ's obviously, just one of our best number 10.
What a player.
But I'm sure glad that we played away in the first leg under that hostile environment. I don't care what happens. It's tough to go down there. You talk to guys like Tony. I was sitting next to Dave Fee watching the game, and Dave would tell you stories about going down there and playing in South America. And he said it's brutal. He doesn't care, how good the crowd is just in terms of ambiance. Mm-hmm. It's a difficult place to play and to come away with
machine gun guards and moats around the field. It's interesting.
Yeah, Fee said he got hit by a calculator being thrown from the crowd one time. So, so to come away with that 1 point for me, you got to love it. It's just too bad we couldn't have come away with 8. Unfortunately, we gave up a couple penalties.
I'm not so much laughing at him being hit by a calculator as the picture of David Fee telling that story.
Yeah. Oh,
that's the first and last time he's ever picked up a calculator, I think.
He's actually a very good coach. He's down here doing a clinic. He's high energy, but just
on the phone.
I just picture him like, I got hit by some random object. Like,
oh yeah, He said he got hit by a calculator. He picked it up and looked at Wilfley and said, "What am I supposed to do with this?" He goes, I just throw it on the side. He goes, I'm going to throw it back. So he threw it back in the crowd, and about 4 more came back as well.
Oh, my God. that sounds like Fee, man. I'm just going to chuck it back at them.
Yep.
Oh, but speaking of chucking, we were chucking the ball a lot on those kicks, and it's funny because that first try, McGinty slotted a conversion that I'm like, he shouldn't have got. Like, between the conditions, between the angle, and then his next kick at post was like directly up the middle, and he missed it.
And then he hit the one the one that was the game winner. Yes. That was a tough kick as well.
It's funny, and I think that's just how it's when you get to that weather, it's just going to be that tricky, and it doesn't matter how good of an angle or how close you are if you don't get your foot down and set comfortably, you're gonna shank it. I just found it funny. Something we looked at, me and my buddies when we were kind of debriefing the match. But I do think Rob, I agree with Rob in the fact that dominant scrum is going to be a thing that's going to happen in Glendale for us. I think you're going to see it come together with better footing, home field advantage, the crowd. Hopefully there's not this ridiculous, amount of weather. I don't think, as far as I look, there's not going to be. And I just have to go back to Tony's comment about there were drownings when Tony played.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
It's something you think you'd say when you're talking about rugby.
Rucks were a little different then, but
right. Like you think you'd be talking about it like in the 1800s and not the 1980s about drownings. But he does bring up a good point because and as Rob knows, this year's match, NOLA in NOLA had like 7 days of downpour where they had to pour sand at certain spots in the field because it was that poor. And, you're not going to not play the match, because, it was a beautiful day that day, but sometimes you just have to rock with it. And I think that's where they are in the international window right now. I don't think there could be any delay on this, especially since you got to figure it out. And then whoever loses go to repetrage in November. I don't think you want to halt that momentum. And, although I do think if I wonder if they move the game from 2 weeks from now, that extra week of practice for us can't hurt. So guys, what do you think about the short time span that these guys have been in camp? I'm going to start with you, Tim.
Did you say Tim?
Yes.
Yeah. These guys are all pros. So this is different. You know, when you look at this roster, when I played Super League, I was basically on the same practice schedule as some of the Eagles, right? And that's no knock on them. That was just what they had available. But I know that, you know, MLR is doing the best they can with the time allotted. So when I look at this roster, obviously we don't have to worry about the guy at Toulouse. He's getting plenty of training. He knows about a short turnaround. Tafete's done it all. He's been there. You know, everyone on our roster, I'm just looking, there's no one that hasn't been in a stressful environment before, or you know, I think with the short turnaround, these guys are at least going to be on home turf, where now Chile has to get on the road. So I just don't have any worries about this group as far as turnaround and level of professionalism. You know, you look at our skill positions. De Haas has been playing in stressful environments in South Africa, where they play far more than we do here. And McGinty's from way back is coming from an Irish schoolboy competition where they play more games than you can count, with people screaming at them every week. So I think we're in that aspect, I think we're in really good shape.
I think something to be said of some of the pairings in this 23, you know, Paul Mullen backing up by Angus McClellan, you know, playing together. You know, Chance Wengluski, Nick Civetta playing together with Ben Bonasso, you know, those three guys getting in. Hanko being on the team previously with guys like Nick Civetta and Ben Bonasso in New York, and then being on the Eagles with them. You know, sometimes you just pick up those types of players and their habits. So I think we're starting to see the team gel a little bit, even in tough conditions, because we have them playing together, some of these guys in the MLR. You know, and you had veterans, you had some young players, and I think everybody played great. And I think you saw one of the interesting thing is Ruben De Haas kicked in some positions that you might not kick in, but I think Tony hit it on the head with playing the high ball and letting Chile make the mistakes and forcing them to play that high ball. And normally, if the conditions were different, you'd be like, "What the hell is he doing?" But I think it worked. I think you're putting pressure on them to say, "It's your time to have the ball in hand. One, can you get it in these rough conditions? And two, when you get it, can you really run a successful counterattack on the kick in these conditions against a defense who we know is great at tackling?" Tony, I think my next question for you is, do you think we see the same 23 going into next week?
Oh gosh, you know, I'm not close enough to the players to know that.
I would if you're going into it at home, and let's say we know the weather's going to be nice, do you still stick with that 6-2 split?
Whew. I like 6-2 because you know, we've got a couple of, like Nate fills in a nice, you know, 9, 11, 14. You know, we've got some variability there, versatility there. Excuse me. But you know, if you watch the New Zealand game last weekend, I mean, that was just a cluster in terms of players on the field, off the field, and they damn near had to play with one of the forwards and the backs. So yeah, I'm not sure on that. I like our team right now. They look like a team that, you know, could really come together and play some good rugby, you know. And oftentimes playing that good rugby on an Eagle team is about the gelling of the team, you know, the commitment to play for each other, right? You know, because the first week you're together, but, you know, you go through 2 or 3 hard weeks, you start to learn to love each other, want to play for each other, die for each other. And I think this group of players can get to that point.
Absolutely. I do. I love a 6-2 split because I just like seeing forwards with the ball.
You like forwards.
Yeah. Listen, if we could play 1 through 5 and it was all guys above 250, Scott Farrar would be a happy man. It would be terrible rugby, but I'd be happy.
I love it.
And then Rob, real quick, I'm going to give you the last question. What do you think Chile has to do to beat us this upcoming week?
Well, I think they've got to lean on a skill set that suits them, and that's kicking for territory. Putting the ball in the right areas of the field effectively to put the U.S. under pressure and to minimize any kind of attack or counterattack that we might have. We saw what their number 10 can do, and it was Rodrigo was his name. When he got in some open spaces, and
that was a hell of a try.
A hell of a try, individual effort. And our guys, quite frankly, got a little lazy on the defense. So picking an opportunity, picking their chances, finding those opportunities, kicking for touch in the right places, putting the ball into those gaps. Although that's tough to do against a 15 like Brocky. But I want to real quick just touch upon your original question that you threw at Tim. Quite frankly, and I'm not blaming the MLR, but I would like to say it's really too bad that we couldn't get these guys more time to come into camp prior to the international window. Right, especially in a qualifier year like this year, and I just throw out some evidence. Tony, going back, 80s, 90s. How did we stack up against Chile, against Uruguay? 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago.
Like I said, I mean, when we first got into that South American competition a few years ago, I forget what they called it, the
ARCs?
ARC,
yeah. Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, 2 games against Chile. That's kind of I'd rather play England.
Right. Well, we overall we're 6-1 against Chile, right?
No,
with a plus 213 point differential,
right.
And yet we only come away with a single point victory. Against Uruguay, we're 15-4-1 with a plus 251 point differential.
Mm-hmm.
But look what's happened more recently. Why is that? Because those guys are playing together. I think, as Tony mentioned, those guys are playing together on a consistent basis. Imagine what we could do if we had more time in camp, more time to develop.
Uruguay is a really good study. They don't have the physical specimens. They don't have the numbers, but they play some damn good tight rugby together, and it's because they mandate 50 miles around Montevideo and they try and get together. I heard it was like 50 weeks a year, at least one day, 50 weeks.
All the Chilean guys, I believe, come from 3 clubs. I shouldn't say all.
Yep.
Most of them come from 3 clubs.
Yep.
That also feed off the same 3 schools, I believe. It was funny. There was a kid that wanted to go to university up here, and he was shopping around, and someone put him in touch with me, and sure enough, he was from the same. I had just read the article where all the Chilean players, and I looked at their background, and he came from there too. And he was a very smart kid, obviously very skilled, but I think they've got. I mean, if you look at the people on our team, they're just a lot of them are LA based, and a lot of them are New York based. At this point, one thing about MLR has made me very aware of is how tight everyone's schedule is, right. And how we're just not there yet where we can house people in one spot. I do think USA Rugby is getting things right, though.
The most successful North American team ever has been the 91 Canadian World Cup team.
Yep.
And building up to that World Cup, the Canadian Rugby Union mandated that everyone played in the Vancouver Rugby Union. And at Old Puget Sound Beach, we would play up there. So it was pretty cool. I mean, some great teams. But you see what it did for their rugby. And you ask any one of those players, Eddie Evans, Glenn Ennis, Gareth Reese, all those guys, they will tell you that was the key to their success, is playing together and being able to come together, and also playing against one another and earning that respect of each other too, which is I think very, very important on a national team.
Absolutely. Yeah. And also, if you look at the SLAR teams, I'm sure Penarol is probably the going to be essentially your Uruguay national team.
Yep.
Maybe some of the guys go into some of the other teams, but let's be honest, most of those SLAR teams are essentially A-side national teams. So they are, besides playing with and practicing with the national team for that long, they're also doing it on the SLAR side as well. And it's just something we can compete with. And real quick, talking about Canadians, Mo Chowdhury, one of the ARs for that match, who couldn't hear anything for about 20 minutes, but I always like to shout out North American officials, doing test matches. So, guys, that was a great rant. We got to have this group on again, and we have to pick a more in-depth topic. While sometimes I like, this is a broad topic that I'd like to talk about because you guys are going to have 3 different points of view. We have to pinpoint something, me and Rob, next time you guys are on, and have all you 3 in, because you guys are 3 great minds, and you'll have 3 separate opinions, and they'll all be valid. I loved it. But fans, this was a great rant. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed moderating it, that's for sure. It's one of those things where I get the pleasure to moderate some of these from time to time because our buddy Ty can't be with us. But hey, I love it. And before we go into our run, pass, or kick with Dino Waldren, Tony, who is Eagle number 502, we're just going to continue on this.
Oh my gosh.
Eagle kick. We're gonna catch a word from our sponsors to help keep the lights on.
This ball represents the game we love. A game fueled by passion. But there are those who wear no number, nor are they in the locker room or the field of play. But they are there for every high and every low. Yes, they are watching every kick, tackle, and try score. Yes, they are there for when you need them most, because they are the Major League Rugby fans. And the time has come for you to stand with your team. Join us at shopmlr.com today.
And welcome back, Rugby Rant fans. One of my favorite parts of every episode is the run, pass, or kick. Now, before I tell you who we have, even though you can kind of see his name, we're just going to go over his CV because it's one of those times where I'm excited to have a guy on, even though it might be, one of Rob's guys. I'm still excited. But they call
the big guy the big guy. He likes big guys.
I do. I do like my front row guys. I'm not going to lie, but it depends on the team sometimes. But De La Salle High School, St. Mary's College, which us guys on the East Coast at Iona call the other Gales, the second-rate Gales is what we're going to call them.
That's okay, Dino. It's the real Gales. We get it. We understand.
2014 Collegiate All-American. Played for Black Rock College, RFC, London Sky, San Diego Legion. Of the NOLA Gold, USA Eagle number 502, getting his first cap against Romania with 21 caps, and this year's NOLA Gold nominee for the Marcus Callaway Community Impact Award. Dino Waldren, welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. Thank you for that introduction. Definitely a pleasure to be here. Rob got a little special thing there.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. 31 years old today, or 31 years young. Definitely a special day for me. I got to spend my first birthday with my daughter.
Nice.
So very fortunate to have them. I haven't been able to have a birthday with my family in the last 2 years due to rugby and traveling, and we were living between countries. So this is definitely a really cool day today to be able to spend that with them. So again, but excited to be here with you guys. Excited to chop it up with some rugby, and looking forward to the show.
Hey, appreciate it. We know family time is important, especially with you guys and your schedule. So thank you for being on. Hey, Rob, before we go forward with the questions, you want to tell the fans how the RPK works?
Absolutely. I thought you would never ask. So run, pass, or kick interview works like this. For those who are uninitiated, we're going to fire some questions at Dino, and we're going to prompt each question with run, pass, or kick. And while we know on the pitch, props love to run, and sometimes at practice, they like to take a couple kicks at goal because that's just what props do. Quite frankly, in this interview, Dino has some options in front of him. So he can run with a question. He's going to let us know when he wants to do that. He'll just say, I'm going to run with it. And that means he's going to answer it straight up. And he's a pretty straightforward guy. So my guess, just like he runs on the pitch, he's probably going to run with a lot of these. But he also has a couple other outs, one of them being a pass, and he can avoid getting in trouble with the NOLA Gold brass. I definitely don't want to see him get in trouble with the NOLA Gold brass. Fitzy on 5 Mountain Dews and fit to be tied is probably not a good scene. Nevertheless, he can go ahead and pass on a question, which is to say that he's just going to go ahead and let it go, and we're going to move on to the next one. Or Dino could have a lot of fun with us. And again, we know that, props occasionally like their shenanigans, and he might have a kick or two, put us on the back foot. And what that means is when he kicks it to us is that we're going to answer in a way that we think that Dino would answer. And it puts us on the defensive, makes us work a little bit. And he can grade us out, say we were shite, say we were spot on, or he can even follow up some context, but it's entirely up to him. Just like any good rugby player, he has got to have his options. So Dino Waldren, the man of the day, his birthday, Mr. 31. Are you ready for the Run, Pass, or Kick challenge?
I'm ready.
All right. We're going to start us off. And I know it's a little scary for some of our guests. Scott and Ty always get a rise out of this one, but not to creep, but I do. But your wife is described as a manager, global influencer partnerships at EA Sports. At least that's what's on her Facebook profile. It looks like that Dino has to check on that one. Can I acknowledge that, honey? At any rate, here's the question. Have you ever said to her, Run, Pass, or Kick, have you ever said to her, babe, do you think that you could use your influencer skills to work and have EA Sports create a better rugby video game?
That is probably I'll run with this one. This is probably like, I give or take maybe the 1,000th person to ask. I
thought it was an original.
I get asked that a lot. Like when I was, and first credit goes to, I have to throw him a shout for this one, be Blaine Skull. I remember when he first asked me that. My wife was working at EA, or my girlfriend at the time was working at EA. He goes, dude, we got to get her on the rugby. I was like, man, like she worked in, like you see a little thing right there. She worked in FIFA, and now she's working on Madden. And nice. I'm always throwing that. I'm like, hey, like, rugby. And she's like, above my pay grade, hun. I'm like, all right. I just, I remind her every once in a while, like, hey, is there ever going to be a rugby game? She's like, yeah, she goes above my pay grade. I said, okay.
Listen, I got one tip for your wife. Hold on, I got one tip. Aaron Rodgers is a 99 every week, no matter what. Just tell her the Madden's rating guys, Aaron Rodgers should be a 99 every week.
Oh, man.
I thought maybe Blaine Scully was just going to ask you, hey, could I look any prettier than I do now on the current games?
I love that. That's awesome, though. Listen, we're getting there. I'm so excited with the video games that we do have, and we're starting to get there. And I'm one of those gamers who created every team in the MLR in 2021. Every single player.
Wow.
Yeah, I got no life. I got no life. So let's
when that one comes out, we pretty much can guess that Dino Waldren will be a 99 every week.
I pretty much every prop is a 99. Even the backups are 99. I don't play around.
Kicking skills 99.
But let's get to Dino's rugby journey, and we're going to talk. In MLR anyway. You started in San Diego, so Run, Pass, or Kick as a California native. What made you decide to move down to the Bayou of Southern Louisiana?
So, I guess that kind of starts when I'm in London. So, 2019, I get a phone call, San Diego. My contract's up in London. I'm thinking, well, I want to continue to play more rugby. It's a World Cup year. The more rugby I could play under my belt, the better. Rob was the coach there, Rob Hoadley. And I had a long track record with Rob. He coached me in All-Americans in 2014 and 2015. And always kept a good relationship with him. Worked under Gavin Hickey as well, who's also another, I'd consider him a mentor of mine. And, Rob was like, hey, you want to, I see you're available. You want to come to San Diego? I'm like, all right, awesome. I'll come to San Diego. Cool. 3 days later, I got a phone call from Ryan Fitzgerald. And immediately we just hit it off on the phone. I was like, this guy is legendary. But contract issues came up. I signed a paper that wouldn't allow me to go to NOLA. So I had to finish out that contract in San Diego, but again, I knew talking to Fitzgerald and whatnot and understanding what he had going on down there, it seemed like a place I really wanted to be. Plus you had likes of Holden Younger was down there, former teammate, Kevin O'Connor, former teammate, Tim Maupin, former teammate, Cam Dolan, who I played with on the Eagles as well. Kyle Bailey, who I played at London Scottish, was down there already. So there was, there was a couple of guys that I already knew that were already down there that I got on really well, and we clicked really well, and we played together. So that was really how I wanted to get down there. And I knew, like, just talking to Holden Younger and some of those guys, like the atmosphere in NOLA and like what they had and like the environment, and just again, Fitzy did a really good job on selling it to me. But once I got down there, I was like, you know what, this is the place for me, right? I mean, California native for sure, but I mean, I do love like living in the South. Like I do enjoy it. I do enjoy the lifestyle down here and whatnot. So it was very appealing to me, and looking to start my life and family and whatnot, it just seemed like more of a better fit as well.
Listen, we know Fitzy very well. Me and Rob are glad to call him friends. And, one of the things he has going for him, besides his obvious rugby knowledge, is his experience working in the NFL and doing the same type of thing. And, bringing that style over, I think it catches a lot of the American guys their ear a little more. It's a little more familiar to them than maybe some of the other guys giving a spiel, because, he's done it at that top level. And we know playing, rugby, playing football, playing hockey, whatever other sports, every USA athlete's a multi-sport athlete. Let's be honest. It sounds familiar to us. So I think that helps draw guys over to whatever Fitz is doing, and he happens to be at NOLA the past, few years. And I think if he ever moves on to somewhere else, you're going to see a whole bunch of guys move on with him. That's the kind of guy he is. And the fact of the matter is, I don't think he has to sell it as much as he thinks he does, because you are not the first NOLA Gold player to go down there and say they practice what they preach. So I think it's while he does sell it as much as he wants to, I think once you get there, you understand that the culture is driven by family, the players, being good on the field, being a good person off the field, and all those things that they stand for.
For sure, 100% agree.
And that no bullshit Marine Corps attitude is appreciated by a lot of players, right?
I mean, that is a huge driving factor in him as a man. I think it's something that he's definitely identified himself and embodied in his life. And I mean, rightfully so. I mean, my hat's off to all those who served, and I'm very grateful for those gentlemen, those women and men that do that. And, he's embodied that, and rightfully so. And it's definitely a part of something that we have in our team and in our atmosphere and in our culture that, he brings to that table. And it's, as Americans, like you said before, Scott, it's definitely something that we notice and something that we can, that we've grown up with, and he, some of the guys that aren't from here are a little skeptical of it, or they don't really see, or understand, how it kind of works. And, but once at the end of it, they kind of understand, they go, wow, like, I get it. I'm like, yeah, you can understand why now. And there's reasons to why that he is the way he is, and the way our organization and stuff, the way it has to be for him and whatnot.
Absolutely. And, again, you talk about culture and the boys and just how there's a family atmosphere. And so without getting too serious just yet, I'm going to throw the next question at you. I heard a rumor, and I think it's more than just a rumor, that you are an avid deep water fisherman, and you like to thread a line every once in a while, right? So run, pass, or kick. Here we go. If you were to plan a boys fishing weekend, who are the dudes that you're taking with you?
How many do I
It's on
get?
somebody else's dime. Somebody's going, hey, NOLA boys are great guys. Bring some dudes with you. You can go fishing.
We're gonna say 4. You take 4 guys. Who you take?
4 guys fishing with me?
Yeah.
Yep.
4 guys fishing with me. All right. So I'm probably going with Cam Dolan.
Here we go.
Doc Irie, James Doc Irie.
Doc, man.
I'd probably go with Eric Howard. And my last one. Oh, that's a tough one, man. That fourth seat, that's a tough one. That's a tough one, that 4th seat. Oh. Ring of Death. 4 guys enter, 1 guy leaves. You throw Andrew Guerra in there. You throw Brian Knowlton there.
Mm-hmm.
You throw Kevin Sullivan in there. And you throw William Wagglesback in there.
Oof.
Now, here's the interesting thing. Not a back to be had in that core.
Of course not. Listen, we said go fishing. not get a suntan, Rob.
Yeah, you left boys that like to be on the beach like Feexy out of the equation.
Dolan's part back. I mean, a little bit. So we got him.
Yeah.
He counts for. I got. I hit my quota. I think. We got Mr. Handsome. I mean, he's handsome, so we'll let him come on. He's good looking enough where he offsets us all.
That's awesome.
Well, you got to be a wingman for somebody, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely. I'm a terrible fisherman. I could barely catch a cold, much less a fish.
Oh, man, that's a sanctuary for me. Growing up, doing it my whole life. I grew up on the bay in San Francisco, California, about an hour and a half outside. Salmon fishing, halibut fishing, striped bass fishing, sturgeon fishing. I mean, just you name it. We'd go out when the albacore would come in during the El Nino would run in off the fair lawns. We'd be, talking 30 miles out from the Golden Gate, open water, right? Nothing but blue whales jumping and dolphins. And, that's just what we did. And my dad and his dad. And, it was definitely something a part of me. And I hope I can share that and pass it on with me and my kids someday. But fishing to us is, it's really it's a real family home thing, right? Every time I go home to California, first thing my dad asked, we're going fishing. I said, yes, we're going fishing. I said, you get the boat ready, we're going.
And it's funny because I have those experiences on the East Coast, except for the actually catching a fish part. No, I'm serious. I go up to the Cape a lot. My parents have a house up there. We go fishing. I had an uncle out in the Hamptons who retired, and all he did was be on his boat 24/7, which my aunt didn't like. But we were always fishing. My brother would catch, my dad would catch, everybody would catch except for me. I'm telling you, I can't catch a cold. But yeah, it's one of those things you have to have a life outside of rugby, and it's nice to hear every time we ask these types of questions. It's a lot of guys are into golf too. There's like we've had just as many guys fishing and just as many guys golfing.
Yeah,
it's both things I suck at. So maybe you guys should pick different hobbies so we can hang out together.
I go golfing twice a week.
Oh,
here we go.
My golf.
I'd be interested.
Dolan texted me today. He said, "Happy birthday, Poppy." I said, "Thank you." He goes, "Golf next week." I said, "Absolutely. 2 rounds. We're set." Perfect. I said, "Win."
I was going to say,
beat Chile. We're golfing.
Your foursome probably won't look much different than your fishing.
Oh no, the foursome's very different. The only golfers in that group, are probably me and Dolan, and Wags would probably golf a little bit as well. William Wagglesback, but definitely, I mean, probably Juan Capilio, a golfer. He'd be golfing me. Him and Dolan would golf quite a bit. Even Carl Meyer golfs a little bit. JP Duplessis, Dev Ferris when he was down there was with us. Kyle Rogers. So we got a pretty good group. Good group of guys that golf quite a bit. Harley Wheeler likes to get out there and get on the links a bit. So, yeah, but Dolan's probably my golf buddy when it comes to that stuff. And Juan Capilio, we golf. I probably golf with them the most, and Wags.
Yeah,
nice.
I not a guy in there I could hang out with doing those two activities. But anyway, let's move on to the next question. Something we do know about rugby. At the end of the 2022 season, the MLR announced its nominees for the Marcus Callaway Community Impact Award, and you were nominated by the NOLA Gold. Run, pass, or kick. Can you share with the fans a bit about the work you do in the New Orleans community and how much it meant to you being nominated for this award?
Yeah, so I guess first off, to be nominated for that was an honor. It was out of the blue. I didn't even know it. Fitzy texted me one day. He's like, he goes, "Hey brother, forgot to tell you your name's up for the award." I was like, "What?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh," and I was watching the game. I was like, "Oh," "Oh, right on." Like I didn't even know some of the stuff that like I would do in the NOLA Gold community. And again, Fitzy is a huge driver of this. And this is again when you talk about the culture and the identity of Fitzy and whatnot, what he's about. We would do bowling like with special needs on Wednesdays, right? So I'd go there. I went, every Wednesday while I was living in New Orleans before I moved up here. I live north now of New Orleans, about 40 minutes. I'd go bowling every Wednesday with the special needs group, and we'd have a blast. Me and Fitzy would be there as well. We'd go bowling. Do rugby clinics. I drove to Baton Rouge a couple times and did some rugby clinics with the youth. One of the things for the CRCs, Fitzy on a limb reached out to me 4 days for the event was kicking off, and they're like, "Hey, the guy who was supposed to build the goalpost couldn't do it.
Oh man,
I need 8 sets." I'm like, "Huh?" He's like, "Can you do it?" I'm like, "Well, again, one of my fishing buddies, Doc Irie, right?" I was like, "Hey, bro, I need a hand." He's like, "No problem. Let's go get it." We got all the material, built all the goalposts, put them in the ground, had the helps of Andrew Guerra was out there helping me as well on that day. Like, this is the day before the tournament's about to kick off. We're out there after training, nailing down rebar in the ground to put the post on top of it, and just making sure that it won't tip over, right? And you're just cutting them with sawzalls.
A la New York City.
Yeah, it was
actually it's Jersey, isn't it?
Where?
Listen, Rob wants to talk crap about the 2022 MLR champs. I'm just going to write, but Dino, I got a name for you. Next time you need to build goalposts, Hanko Hermesice, he's the guy who built the goalposts in New York that we place on the field. So
Haku,
need a good set.
Great man.
Yeah.
Love Haku. Haku's a fisherman as well. Yeah, it's just some of that community work I just found, to be quite good. And like with Fitzy, my same mindset has always been since I've become played professional rugby, is growing the sport as much as I can, because I was, I never knew what the sport was until I was 21 years old. And so I've always believed like the outreach is a massive part. So even when I'd go back to California, when I was living in England or Ireland, I'd go back and help out with St. Mary's. I'd go back and help out the La Marinda rugby team, the youth team there, and just try to be involved as much as I possibly can. And like, again, I still do that. And I'm continuing to grow that outreach now where I live, again, 40 minutes north of New Orleans. I live in a city called Mandeville, and we're trying to grow the sport up here as much as we can, and having youth camps. And there's a couple clubs up here now, I believe, and they're starting to grow. And again, it's the youth. I mean, that's where they always talk about where it's going to be fundamentally starting and how the game's supposed to grow. And, and again, I just think that community outreach stuff, it just goes a long way, because the things that rugby can offer outside of, the culture and the atmosphere. I mean, just you think about it as a young man or woman, you really find out a lot about yourself playing 80 minutes, no whistles blown, no timeouts, no nothing, no water breaks. You just got to go. You got to play offense. You got to play defense. I mean, there's a lot of mental toughness to it, but then the community side of it, the family, it's very family oriented. Even at the professional level, the national level, you mix with the team after every game. You have socials. You're all inclusive. I mean, you can go anywhere in the world and go play for a rugby club, and that club's going to put you in a house, feed you, give you stuff to drink, and take care of you like you're one of their own. And there's not a sport like that in the planet besides rugby. And I've just found that to be really unique. And I think it offers so much to our youth and so much to America, where it's just such a different sport. And again, I just find myself really being attached to that and want to see the game grow.
Yeah, 100%. I just recently, a buddy of ours who also does some podcasting came into Chicago. We had never met before, other than on this platform. And I'm like, TJ, I'll pick you up. We'll go out. He's like, no, you don't have to do that, bro. I said, no, I'm picking you up from the airport, man. And we're going to go out. We're going to enjoy a couple beers together and just catch up. And that's the way it is. That's what we love about the sport. It's one of the things that as a coach, I always tried to sell our high school players on, is that it's such a unique way to bond. And I just love it, especially because as kids get older, like my own son, as he's played more and more, he runs into guys that he played against and they play with each other or vice versa. And there's always something to connect with. It's awesome. I want to hit upon that community engagement piece, Dino. And I hope this doesn't come out negative, but around the league, from a naked eye watching, TRN, it looked like attendance levels were down from pre-COVID levels. So I think what's a lot of people want to know is, run, pass, or kick, what did teams like NOLA, but teams all around the league, need to do in order to better engage their communities and garner more support so they can fill those stands and attract more people to the game that have never played?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, your first thing is right. I mean, it comes down to the dollar, and it's tough. So a lot of the weight falls on the shoulders of us players, I think, and it's understanding like you're playing this sport. Yeah, you're professionally getting paid, but especially for Americans, in order for us to see this continue to grow, we have to be the ones to be more out, to do more community outreach, and it's a tough ask, right? I mean, imagine going to training and then being asked to go do a social event for another 2 hours afterwards, right? Because they want to meet us. They don't want to listen. They don't know who, let's say, Jimmy Joe is from the marketing side of it, right? They want to talk to Dino Waldren. They want to talk to Cam Dolan or Carl Meyer or JP Duplessis. Those are going to get the engagements, I think, to the people to come in. And I think they've done a really fantastic job of trying to get the television, people seeing it, right? But it's a tough ask because, again, the dollar isn't what it is of that of the NFL or the MLB or the NBA. So, reaching out, I think linking with colleges as well would be a pretty good idea. Imagine if you had a college game open up before every MLR match, right? A college team plays, and then that way all those college kids are there, they get to watch, and then, you try to get that reach first, start small and then hopefully expand. Because I think one thing that's really untapped is the college rugby. And I know a lot of people think, well, the development of those kids are maybe that not of MLR quality, but, we have to start somewhere. And I think that what we continue to grow the college. Look what they've done with sevens. Sevens took off overnight. it literally just erupted. As soon as it became an Olympic sport, it flew. And, it's really, I think the 2031 World Cup, am I correct in saying that?
Yeah.
Is in the USA? I think that getting that momentum going, building towards that is definitely going to help the sport grow. But in the meantime, it's just groundwork. It's boots on the ground. It's, it's understanding like, yeah, you just got done training, but, we need you to go do this. We need you to go out there and hold those camps. And, I think maybe putting some of that money into that development side of it, the MLR, like I think the NFL has the
Play 60.
Right. Is that it? Play 60?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Something similar to that, where some of that money is set aside for that youth development and growing the sport for the youth. I think that would be a huge factor because rugby, is played on a Saturday. It's an afternoon sport. Well, what are dads doing on Saturdays with their sons and daughters? You got soccer, you got baseball, you got softball, you got basketball, could be hockey, right? If you live in the Northeast, it's busy. So you're competing with some of these sports that have been ingrained in us since, the early 1900s. It's a tough ask, but I think, the more we do it, the more consistent we are doing it and the better we get at it, it's only going to benefit us more as the MLR and for teams around the league as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you don't get it's tough to develop a kid in college so he becomes an Eagle. But having said that, it's also the kid that goes, if he has a good experience, hey,
she's just getting ready for bed. I'm sorry.
No, that's no worries. But even if, they have that good experience with rugby, they're going to be the guys that fill the stands, right? That help sell the sport to others. And they have kids and they help their kids get into the game. I didn't start playing until I was 24 myself, till after college. But my son started playing at 5th grade and, now he's at Lindenwood. So,
Thanks, baby. Good night. Daddy's gotta go.
She's like, that dude needs to be quiet. He doesn't know jack shit about rugby.
Sorry about that. No, but see, Rob, that's like you and me are perfect examples of that, right? I started when I was 21. I was a college football player. And I got fortunate enough to get a phone call from a guy named Jordan Bowie, who, I think Scott mentioned earlier, I played at Dale Sal High School. I played football there. And, he was like, hey, how do you feel about coming to play rugby? And I was like, what's rugby? I just got done playing. I'm playing college football. I was like, what's St. Mary's College? I didn't even know what it was. And I lived in the area. Right. And he's like, dude, just come try it. Check it out. He goes, at the very least, get your education, get your degree. I was like, all right. I went out there, fell in love. I was like, this is the sport I should have been playing all along. And, I just hope that, I just hope that can, some kids can translate that. Right. And when I say translate, a guy like myself, I was a college football player, came over to rugby. Now, people always say well, they know their rugby better in England. They know it better in Australia, New Zealand. That's great. And I credit to those countries for sure. But to get those kids to understand, to translate it to these American athletes, I think it does take someone who's experienced that same type of thing. Right. And, that's where we have to do, again, you talk about better outreach. That's some of that source where Fitzy does a great job of. He can see that potential in some of those guys that are playing a different sport and see the athleticism in that kid, or see something that can translate him from, playing running back and putting him in at center, or putting a middle linebacker at flanker, or a DN that could be a hybrid lock, right? So he can see those type of things, with the football transfer over, right? It's mostly the common sport for us, for guys that play, usually football to rugby. Rugby is usually the two commons. I just think it's on guys like myself and other guys who have that same experience to really to connect those kids and give them to be able to understand, how it transfers and, the likes and the possibilities and what it can bring to your life. And, if you want to give it a shot.
Absolutely. And 100%. I think one of the biggest examples of that crossover athlete right now, I would say she was probably the player of the Premier 15s over in England, Alev Kelter. She got cut by Team USA Hockey after winning a couple championships at Wisconsin playing women's hockey. And I believe somebody saw her around the Olympic training area and I don't know exactly who said it, but they were kind of like, you should probably check rugby out. And Alev Kelter was born in her rugby career there. So, I mean, I think you're right. I think just like crossover fans we're looking for, we need those crossover athletes. We need to find those guys that can exceed and excel in rugby. And we already know that we have the athletic parts down here. I mean, look at any college football team in the land, any Division I team, and the amount of money they put into their college football, just the athletic side of it, the nutrition side of it. This is all stuff that we excel at here. We just have to translate it into the game. And like you said, through money. I think I think you're correct in that assumption. It's been great talking to you, Dino. This is actually one of the segments that have run longer in recent weeks. I mean, you just have great answers and you expand upon them, and it's stuff that me and Rob say all the time. So I'm glad to hear somebody else say it that has the pedigree of rugby that you do, that represents the Eagles, that plays professional rugby. Because sometimes I think me and Rob are like, meh. Like, are we bullshitting ourselves because we're not there? You know what I mean? Like, it's good to know that other people are thinking the same things we're thinking. So, and to know that we're right on target. Before we go from the show real quick, we just want to hand you over the mic. If you have anything, any special person you want to give a shout out to, you want to say hello to, you want an organization that's near dear to your heart, this is your time.
Oh, first, you always give a shout out to your club, right? NOLA Gold. I mean, they've always done well for me, right? I mean, you guys mentioned Mr. Falcon to me before the show started. I mean, Tim's been, treated. He's been very, very gracious to me, and Fitzy has been awesome to me. And I give my hat off to Kane Thompson from the years he's definitely pushed me as a player. His expectations for me as a person, as a player, has been really high, and it's definitely helped me grow as a person. So definitely hats off to them. And St. Mary's Rugby with like Tim O'Brien been huge in my development as a rugby player, and even the young American coach. And again, this is one thing. I mean, you can definitely dive into is American coaches in the MLR, and one of the only ones besides that was Sean Pittman, right? And also USA Eagle, who's coaching the attack, right? Was Sean, right? And, Sean, grade 9, played 9 for us, was a great ball player. He's coaching over there. And then Brendan O'Mara. I mean, Brendan O'Mara is a St. Mary's guy, came over, did his stuff at Austin. And, I think it's a huge thing for having American coaches like in the league. I think, again, that's part of the development because you need that quality of coaches. And that's the next step for us, right? Is these guys who played in the Eagles and these guys put their hand up to be the next, cycle of coaches that coach the youth and give that, that higher level of knowledge to the game, and that's, like I talked about, like where it's our job, you got to put your hand up and, you got like Will McGee, going to be a great coach one day. I think he's a great rugby mind. And, I've always talked about it with him. And, you got Dylan Fawcett, who's always doing a lot of community outreach. He was on there for New York, it's just, guys like that, they're going to put their hand up and, jump in the league as these American guys and, put their foot forward and hopefully grow in this game. And, those huge shout out to those guys for doing what they're doing. And then my wife, always, because without her, I don't think I'm able to play rugby. But, that's
and if she does her job, quite frankly, your name will be forever etched in EA Sports lore, right?
He's the guy who married the lady who got the rugby game on EA Sports. That's what
wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something?
But Dino, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it. Fans, if you want to see more Dino, if you want to see both sets of our Rugby Rant and who won the Rugby Rant, I'm not going to tell you who won, though. Go to patreon.com/Rugby Rant Pod. Only $3 a month. That's less than one beer at the Pig and Whistle. You can get all this extra content we give you But it helps us keep the lights on. It gives you guys access to more and more content that me, Rob, and Ty create. We appreciate you guys watching and everything like that. Thank you so much. This episode is done and dusted, and we'll see you guys at the next.